Welcome to Urban Takeaways. This is a film series where researchers and practitioners meet from different disciplines and knowledge fields. We will focus on inspirational stories from sustainable urban development, on method development and knowledge production across disciplines and sectors. My name is Nina Vogel and I will be your host. This first Urban Takeaway will be about the Futures Lab, a forum for learning and research, for transdisciplinary capacity building and to act upon our futures. Today I would like to welcome Josefin Wangel. She is a researcher at the Department for Rural and Urban Development and she's a coordinator of the Futures Lab here at SLU. She holds particular expertise and interest in future studies and in how to use it to influence urban transformation. Welcome, Josefin.
Thank you, Nina.
To go directly into medias res, so to say, why is it important to support a future-oriented way of working? And what kind of skills are needed?
Thank you, Nina. I think that's a really good question. I think that the last year has shown us the need of addressing uncertainties, not only uncertainties that we are already aware of, but also to continuously scan the horizon for new uncertainties, which could be challenging, but that could also entail possibilities. And in order to learn to identify those uncertainties and possibilities and to work with them in productive ways, we need to unlearn quite a few things that we have taken for granted about the future and about how prediction works, and relearn new and other ways of relating to the future that better embraces complexity and openness and dynamics, which are all challenges we need to address in order to pursue a more sustainable and just society.
Thus, the main takeaway is that it takes practice to learn and relearn to actively engage in futures. So, could you tell us a bit more about the Futures Lab? How did you decide upon this project and the process? And why a multidisciplinary group of people?
Well, thank you, Nina. I think the idea of a Futures Lab is in itself a good example of why we need collaboration. So in the platform SLU Urban Futures and the platform SLU Future Food, we had been discussing for quite some time how to make sense of the futures part of the platforms. Because, we're not only platforms, we're future platforms, right? And then during a study visit to the Pufendorf Institute at Lund University, I found a process design that I thought was quite compelling because it allowed for an open-ended and curiosity-driven exploration of research questions that were not yet fully formalized and formulated, but that existed only as seeds, as early questions. And I saw a possibility here to use this open-ended approach to provide a possibility for researchers at SLU to take on the future in a curiosity-driven way that would then embrace the openness and complexity that characterizes the future. And the reason for why we went for a multidisciplinary group is partly because the future platforms are also charged with developing inter and transdisciplinary work practices, but primarily because the future and future challenges tend to be of a character that demands multi and interdisciplinary collaboration. So we wanted to see if we, in this future lab, could identify new inter and transdisciplinary research questions.
So could you say that the Futures Lab is actually provoking new forms of knowledge co-production? This sounds challenging. How was it perceived by the participants in the Futures Lab?
I think that varies a bit both across participants, but also during the time the Futures Lab has been ongoing. This is a 12-month project, as you know. And when we started in January 2020, this was before the COVID-19 had become a global pandemic. So we had this wonderful plan with a lot of interactive hands-on workshops scheduled and lots of external lecturers that would come to SLU and share their experiences. But then as the pandemic developed, of course, we had to change the way we interacted and met in the Futures Lab. But still, I am super impressed with how the participants in the Futures Lab maintained their engagement and enthusiasm in this project throughout the entire process.
Interesting. Let's listen to some of the participants and what they have to say about the Futures Lab.
The Future Lab gave me a great opportunity to really learn about a new topic and really think about transdisciplinary and future studies. The present way of working in the university doesn't really provide you with this time, so I think that was a great opportunity and a creative environment of discussing these topics. I will take this with me straight into my master thesis courses where I'm teaching. It's already given spin-off effects for applications and also linked to international collaborations. And I think future studies is really an important topic, and then a topic that perhaps is easy adaptable to your present knowledge in a specific field. Thank you.
Min tid i Framtidslabbet har varit superrolig och givande, och jag har lärt mig massor med nytt. Jag har lärt mig hur man kan titta på framtiden och studera framtiden och kanske till och med planera för en annan och en bättre framtid. Jag har också träffat väldigt många andra forskare från andra forskningsområden och inlett nya samarbeten som nu pågår och jag tror kommer utvecklas framöver. Det har gett mig också en mer positiv syn framåt. Jag vet att vi kan vara med och påverka en framtid och göra någonting bättre än vad vi har just nu. Och det har givit mig också någonting som person. Så jag är väldigt tacksam för min tid i Framtidslabbet.
Participating in the Futures Lab was really a unique and rewarding experience for me. One of the things I appreciated most about it was the degree of freedom we had to kind of follow our interests, follow our whims to different research projects and approaches that we did. And it also opened up a whole new field of inquiry for me of future studies and some of the things that I would have been intimidated by before in terms of, future scenarios and backcasting and things like that. I feel comfortable with now, and I'm already incorporating some of them into my teaching and research proposals, which is exciting. And maybe foremost, I came away with a new group of colleagues, or more properly perhaps comrades. We really had a great camaraderie within the group, and I feel like I have this expanded network of people with all these different areas of expertise that I can go to and interact with and hopefully work with in future. So it's really been a wonderful experience.
Hi, my name is David Ljungberg. I work with logistics and transport systems, mainly in the food chain. In this area, you often come across future scenarios and long-term goals and visions. And I wanted to learn more about how to work with future scenarios in a more structured way. Being part of the Futures Lab, we've been like a small academy of researchers from different areas, and we had some time to study and discuss and develop ideas together. I really enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun, and I hope that we can keep working on those ideas also in the future.
So the Futures Lab is a new way of working for everyone, and you also mentioned some challenges. So how do you cope with these challenges, and what did you learn for the next round of a Futures Lab?
Thank you, Nina. I think that there were at least two challenges that were a bit recurring, and the first of these challenges was, I think, coming from the fact that none of the participants knew future studies or like how to work with futures-oriented methods before they joined Framtidslabbet or the Futures Lab. And that meant that they had to leave their disciplinary comfort zone, so to speak, behind, which at times was really challenging for the participants. But I think that we together managed to deal with this challenge through creating a really friendly and open atmosphere, and helping each other out through reminding us that this is a challenging process that we are going through. And another challenge that we struggled with a bit was that as a researcher, you are kind of trained into deliver stuff, reports, scientific articles, research proposals, course designs, blog posts, etc. And I think that for a few of the participants, and myself included, the open-endedness of the process was challenging in this respect, because we had to unlearn this production-oriented mode of working and try to relearn this curiosity-driven, open-ended experimentation. And that was really challenging at times. So there are a number of projects coming out of the Futures Lab. For example, we have one super interesting project related to urban green infrastructure in shrinking cities, and actually a new collaboration with North American researchers. Another example is also including a new collaboration, but this time with researchers from France, and is focusing on how urban greenery is depicted in science fiction stories and movies, and thus exploring what that can tell us about urban green futures. And last but not least, a really interesting project on how young farmers perceive their futures and the future of their agricultural practices. So there are a lot of interesting stuff happening in the Futures Lab, so keep an eye out for upcoming events and news.
Indeed, this sounds interesting. So what's next, Josefin? Anything planned for the future?
Of course, what would a Futures Lab be if we didn't plan for the future, right? So the first cycle of the Futures Lab is now finalized, and during this year, 2021, the Futures Lab will take another shape, so it will become more of an outwards oriented engagement process, where we plan to invite lecturers to widen the scope of ideas of how to address the future. We have an idea of creating a kind of a panel of framtidsspanare, future scouts or horizon scanners from students and junior researchers, including PhD students, because we are super curious to hear what these younger scholars, who are indeed the practitioners of the future, what they are seeing on the horizon as relevant research questions, relevant new practices, etc.
That's great. There seems to be interest in the future, in engaging with the future, and also in the Futures Lab as an experimental structure for capacity building. We are curious to see how this concept will continue to take shape in 2021 and what kind of conceptual spin-offs it may bring along and can foster. Thank you, Josefin, and thanks for sharing your takeaways.
Thank you so much, Nina, for inviting me.
If you want to know more about the Futures Lab, SLU Urban Futures, and the next upcoming interviews, please follow us on social media, the web, and sign up for our newsletter. See you soon again.